Well, welcome back, my Law and Crime family. As you know, this is the Law and Crime Network. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. I did, but now we're back to work. And as you know, we are covering a lot of things here at the network today. First, I want to tell you there was a hearing going on in the case of Robert Durst in California. We will bring you live updates as we have them, as the judge is not allowing our cameras in the courtroom right now. But we will tell you what's going on. Remember, he's charged with the killing of his friend in California to cover up the killing of his wife decades ago in New York, Kathleen Durst. And then we are in the case in Arizona. A state trooper was shot. Terrible. Trooper Casey, you know him from the network, from the A&E show, from Live PD Nation, which of course is hosted by our own Dan Abrams, the owner of this network, along with the A&E network. And that case is right now in lunch hour. But the trooper was shot allegedly by Ramon Bueno in Arizona. So we are going to bring that to you. The good news is that the trooper was back to work in about a year, and he did live. The bad news is that we do have somebody on trial for this attempted murder, but we'll follow that and we'll be there when it comes back. But right now, we are in the case still of the death of Teresa Sievers. We just finished on the stand with Dr. Mark Petrides. He's the one who found the body, as you know from the first case that we covered here on the Law and Crime Network. But now, did Mark Sievers, did the husband, authorize two hitmen to go kill his wife? There is a new witness coming to the stand. The defendant is on their case. They have been calling witnesses, really recalling witnesses, I should say, all day. Crime scene experts, the person who found the body. They have not called anybody new, and of course we're waiting to see when they do. They say they will call the lawyer for the estate of Teresa Sievers to show, I assume, that Mark Sievers, her husband, didn't benefit very much. But let's see, this is a new witness. It is not Mr. Sievers, it's not Mark Sievers, but someone else. Let's listen to who this is. Or a durable power of attorney could be a living will, which most of us are familiar with. But let me bring my guests who know a lot more about this than I do. First, Dina Dahl in California. I'm so happy to be on the air with you. You are an amazing trial mediator. You're a trial attorney. I mean, you can tell us really what's going on. And then, of course, I have my mind meld. There he is, Joseph Scott Morgan, who is from Jackson State University, right? Jacksonville State University.
It's Jacksonville State University,
yes. Right? And he and I are we're kind of like forensic buddies, if you want to call it. That's a new show, Forensic Buddies, Joe. Here we are. Okay, let me start with you, Joe. All right, we were hearing this, Monica Lyons, and I anticipated she was going to be the next witness because she's probably going to tell us about the estate of Dr. Sievers. And why is that important that she's on the stand for the defense?
I think that it's important, Linda, because what they're doing is they're trying to show that that this fellow didn't really have any kind of financial interest as far as the motivation goes, that he didn't gain a lot. Let's think back, anytime we're talking about a murder that appears to be, planned, albeit very poorly in this case, what's the motivation? Well, many times it's love, it's jealousy, and numero uno is money. Who sets to gain? And so are they establishing this? Is the defense establishing this with a possible motive?
So, Dina Dahl, help me here. Okay. Love, jealousy, money. I'd probably add another one to complement that, freedom. So if you are advising the defense here as to how Ms. Lyons must come off for the jury, what do you tell them?
It looked like they really took their time with some foundational questions to try to show that she's, an expert in her field. But I'm very curious to see what the rest of her testimony is going to be. How exactly he didn't benefit from the $4 million insurance policy that I would assume he was the beneficiary of.
So I think both of my guests hit it on the head, but you know what? We're going to take a very quick break, and then we come back. We'll listen to whether Ms. Lyons, Monica Lyons, the attorney, can give us or get Dr. Sievers out of the jam he's in. Stay tuned. Case discussing for the defense the will, I gather, because we haven't gotten there yet. We're still on irrevocable and revocable trusts. I suggest that we listen to see whether or not there's still a motive, whether or not Dr. Sievers was revocable to Mark Sievers, while we listen to Monica Lyons. Okay, my trial attorney, Dina Dahl, she said for the question. When did you write that, or when did you begin it? She said, I wrote the irrevocable trust at the time of the execution. Now, if I am the prosecutor, I'm all over that. And if I am the defense attorney, I don't think he really knows what he just said. What do you think?
Yeah, that in a murder trial, that word definitely has a double meaning, to say the least. You know, in corporate law, it means that that's the day that the document was signed. But here in a murder trial, I think it's very distracting for the jury. If I were the defense, I would have clarified the meaning of that word just to kind of clear it up, because the jury might kind of have hung on to that word a little bit too long for my taste.
And Joseph Scott Moore, just really quickly, in our chat room, Max loves Cece. I actually stole his line. He was the one who said, well, you shouldn't be talking about irrevocable right now, because clearly, in his opinion, now the jury has to find out here whether or not it's true, Mark Sievers found Dr. Sievers revocable. So when you're in a trial, do you have to think about these things that you're saying to a juror and words that you use?
Oh, yeah, because every little, it's almost like a Japanese tea ceremony sometimes. You know, I'm a non-lawyer, so I sit here and I watch these trials, and every little motion, every little comment, every little note, someone scribbling at the table, anything you say can be perceived in a particular way. And so you have to be mindful of these things at all times, because you don't know how the jury is going to interpret this.
And Joe, we have to, you know what? We have to go right into court. So I'm going to have you hold that thought about something else, and let's go back and to listen to the attorney, Monica Lyons. Yeah. So we don't hear about the rule against perpetuity, something we learn in law school in the States and Wales. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, hopefully we'll be in the meat of this examination. While we were away, Monica Lyons, the attorney for the estate of Teresa Sievers, said that she had bought a $2.5 million policy, I'm reading it right here, to put into this irrevocable trust, which she couldn't change. But then she said something about, may I talk about the other policy, which she didn't talk about. So let's listen to see if we can hear about the two insurance policies. Okay, while we're still talking about basically the rule against perpetuities, because that takes a long time, I'm just kidding with all of you, because this is a very serious matter. I'd like to bring my guest in. Joseph Scott Morgan, I interrupted you before we went to break, but I want to hope that you can meld two different areas for me. When Monica Lyons, the attorney who did the estates for obviously the Sievers, she talked about Teresa, and she talked about what a great person she is, what a wonderful person she is, dynamic, the most dynamic she ever met. Doesn't that hurt, in your opinion, as a viewer, Mark Sievers sitting there who's accused of her murder?
Yeah, I think that it does. And I'll tell you another interesting point here, Linda, is the fact that she's testifying as an expert in this area of wills and all of these sorts of things and trust, but yet she adds this other element relative to her personal knowledge of the individual. I think that's kind of intriguing as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I think that it cuts both ways.
Okay, so Dina Dahl, you are you advise about trials. You try to settle things in terms of trials. You're an amazing trial attorney. You're in California watching Florida, right? This is Florida law right now. And we have Mr. Mummert asking this witness all of these questions. When he just asked the witness about the formation of a new business, she said that Mark Lyons helped form Restorative Health. Doesn't that now increase the motive that he had an interest in her business, that if she walked away, he may not get?
That's a very good point. I think you're right. Maybe the prosecution will kind of draw that out more and cross, because obviously the defense kind of quickly moved over that point. Whether or not there's a little bit more meat there or not, we're going to have to stay tuned. This has already been a little bit of a drawn out process. I wish the defense had come quicker to its point here. We've been watching almost 45 minutes this witness, and I still don't actually know what the defense wants out of her.
Well, hopefully we'll find out. Dina, after this break, stay with us, my law and crime families. We have to take one of those breaks, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. We are in the case of the state versus Mark Sievers, who's accused of masterminding the terrible death of his wife, Dr. Teresa Sievers. But on the stand right now on direct examination in the defense case is Monica Lyons. She is an estate and wills planning lawyer. She planned the estate of Dr. Sievers. We assume she's going to get to some evidence that's going to show us that there was no motive for Mark Sievers to kill his wife. So let's listen. Okay, with a little knowledge and having litigated an estate case for 10 years, which is something I don't normally do, I'd like to talk to my guests. Okay, so Dina Dahl, she mentioned Monica Lyons' health, education, maintenance, HEMPS support, right? Right? And support, right? Correct? Right. Okay. Now, if the trustee is Mark Sievers and he wants to take his kids on a vacation to Florida first class, if he wants to buy a bigger house with 4 bedrooms and it's just in a better neighborhood, he's allowed to do that for the benefit of the health, the support, the maintenance, right, of the children under this.
Yeah, he sure is, as long as it's something that is to the benefit of the children. If he did something that was so inconsistent, like, move to Europe and uproot the children and to their harm, okay, maybe that would be called into question. But definitely maintaining their quality of life, or maybe even doing some extra things because these children are depressed and he wants to take some extra vacations to cheer them up. He could do any of those things as the trustee.
So Joseph Scott Morgan, so if he's allowed to buy this, like, let's say, a mansion, a wonderful house, and then he has his money free to spend it on other things for himself, and he has his, as you said, he has his freedom and he has power, right? And if he's jealous and all, how does this help him?
I don't, I got to tell you, I think that this testimony does not mitigate the fact that finances could have been the motivation here. It's like someone that has, say, for instance, a corporation that's set up and they're paying for trips, around the world, saying that it's business related. Well, let's try to fold that into this idea where he's the trustee. As long as those kids are under his control, he can pretty much do with that money whatever he sees fit, as long as it's viewed by the courts as reasonable. And then we have to come to the question, well, what is the reasonableness of this? What steps would he have taken? Of course, now we'll never know, but maybe that was one of the motivating factors. At the end of the day, you have to ask your question: risk versus reward. Is it worth your time to plan out the death of this woman that you have had a family with, created children with, all these sorts of things, for the payout at the end of the day? And they're going to have to push this across the line if they want to make that argument.
Okay, so Dina, I'm looking at Curtis Wainwright, who pleaded guilty, got a 25-year deal. Jimmy Rogers got second degree. He'll probably get about the same time. And there we have Mark Sievers, who kind of looks like his defense attorney. So if you are now, would you have tried or put this witness on differently? And if so, how? Tell us.
The only thing that I can see could be helpful, and maybe the defense is getting there, like we said, he's taking a long time to get there, is he's trying to show that since Mark Sievers wasn't entitled to a large payout sum, he couldn't share the proceeds with these other Wright and Rogers. And Wright
and
alleged,
Dina, I think you hit the nail on the head. And guess what we have to do? We have to take a quick break. So we're going to ask our law and crime family to stay with us, and we'll be right back in the Mark Sievers trial.